Welcome back to the Daily Edge. I'm here with my brothers TJ and Todd Daly, and today we're going to talk about generalization and specialization. There's a constant shift, I know, at least in the business world, for us to specialize in what we provide and to become this unbelievable person in one thing. And I just kind of see the world trending more towards that, but I'd love to get your guys' take on this subject. So I'm going to kick it over to TJ.
Yeah, I've been thinking a lot about it as well, qualitatively and quantitatively, right? We now have these resources at our disposal that allow us to do so much. I personally have been feeling like utilizing those resources. I'm doing a lot of things, but I'm not doing what I would want to be doing from a quantitative standpoint with any of it, right? So I'm doing 20%, in the past I could do 10% of 10 things. Now with technology, I'm able to do 30% of 10 things. It's still not enough. And then on the qualitative side as well, using technology, not deepening my understanding. And I think we see a lot of that in business, like the Dunning-Kruger effect, where you know just enough. And now you can go out to a lawyer's language model and get statistical information to back up the just enough that you know, and not have the ability to fact check yourself. So I found myself in a situation where I'm kind of feeling insufficient, inefficient, and insignificant as a contributor in a lot of ways because of the way things are unfolding.
Have we talked about chronological snobbery on this episode before?
I don't think so.
So chronological snobbery is this idea that we feel like as a subsequent generation, we're smarter than the people before us. I think we maybe talked about it, touched on it a little bit spiritually, that we are more knowledgeable, we know more, we're more informed, and the further you go back, the more you kind of have this caveman kind of perception that these people had no idea what they were doing or were just kind of stumbling around. One of the things, and I think what's interesting as I've been familiarized with that concept, is there's a lot of areas where I feel like were superior to us in the way we live and how we operate today. And I think this is one of them. You think back to, and I had a chance to go to Rome 2.5 years ago and was looking in these churches in different areas and had a chance to go in the Sistine Chapel. People spent years, if not their entire lives, on like a few masterpieces. Like you think about the artist in particular. Like I don't know how many years it took Michelangelo to paint the Sistine Chapel, but it was a lot. I feel like if we can't get something done in 30 minutes these days, we're out. The ability to stick with something and excel, and like even the sculptures, like the sculptures that they would carve were so intricate and it took so long, but they had such an ability to devote themselves to that single thing. And maybe it was because there wasn't a lot of distraction. I don't know. But I do look back with admiration on how they were able to specialize, I think, both quantitatively and qualitatively in the most substantial manner. And it shows because a lot of what they created hundreds, and in some cases closer to thousands of years ago, are still relevant and are still looked at as unbelievable pieces of artwork.
Interesting. I don't remember if it was Michelangelo or was he the guy that studied like dead bodies, like corpses, like risked. It was either him. Mm-hmm. I'm pretty sure it was him. Mm-hmm. Because he wanted to see how, like, when you held your hand, like how the muscle in the arm looked and so I think back then, messing with corpses was like almost a potential death thing if you got caught doing it. But he was so obsessed with his craft that he wanted to understand every muscle in the body and how it would move depending on how arms and legs in different positions, which I think has led to some of the fascination, but also some of the obsession with. And then when you think about like historic buildings, you used to have, hand carved. When you see some of those intricate buildings, like that was someone's whole thing. It's like if you could find someone who could carve these things into the wood and the amount of time that took. I wonder why. we stopped appreciating some of that stuff, because I wouldn't say most of it, but the Renaissance period was a strong period for enlightenment and development of the arts and appreciation for some of these crafts. And, today it's like, give me a white box so I can get my product out the door. Like, where do you think we lost in that?
Is it patience related? Like, I feel like back in the day, like it would take, in some cases you hear about some of these buildings, it started and they built it for 10 years and then they took a break and then they finished it, 20 years later or whatever. Now, I don't care what building you're building, it better be done in 18 to 24 months. Like, there's just like, we got to go, we got to have this. There seems to be a pressure on having more sooner than really taking the time.
I think it's patience of the uninitiated. And I think some people look at it from a positive light versus a negative light, right? So like, there's a couple different examples here when I say that. Patience is of the uninitiated. And this goes back to what we were talking about from a Dunning-Kruger effect perspective. And just so people are aware, that's when you know just enough to be dangerous, right? That's another analogy or statement you can tie to that term. But point being is, you see this a lot, and you guys can speak to this. I think some of the most catastrophic executive hires that I've seen in business, not in ones I've worked in personally, but ones that I've been fairly close to, have been CEOs who operate in that manner, where they know like just enough to get into somebody's kitchen and mess with it, but not the depth of what they're doing. And it really causes a lot of unrest because you have a person, and now that's multiplied with the resources that we have, that believes that they understand every single silo or every single vertical of a business at a depth that they probably really don't. And it really upsets the apple cart when it comes to employees and their belief that someone truly cares about them. So I think in a lot of instances, people will come in at that level. They'll see something that they don't believe is efficient because they can't fully appreciate the depths of what it takes to accomplish that. And so I think that can have a really negative impact on culture. Or on the other side of things, and this would, you have somebody like an Elon Musk who is brilliant, but and understands things from an engineering perspective. Again, though, he'll be the first one to say this. He has people on his teams at SpaceX and Tesla and X or whatever that are way smarter than he is. But he comes in with enough knowledge, and for him, probably a little deeper than most, to put the screws to people. Right? Oh, well, and he's known for this. Oh, we can do this with this. All right, we'll do it with 20% of that. And again, I think in a lot of instances that satiates the appetite of the consumer because it gives them things quicker and cheaper, but it doesn't, and maybe it's a capitalistic thing that's causing everything to go down that path. I will say this, I believe that now, from an art perspective, I'm starting to feel more and more, I don't know about you guys, I know I've been all over the place with this statement, but more and more disengaged with things that I can tell are AI. If I see somebody create a logo for a business or a logo for something, and again, I know you're trying to do it, it's like, it's like, I can tell, it's like, again, that they're taking that shortcut, that it's like, you didn't spend the time to work with somebody who understands this craft. You just input it into a system. And so I understand they're trying to start something, but it turns me off to it.
It was funny. Recently went to see a comedian. Me and Todd went, Nate Bargatze, and he said, I didn't go to college. He goes, that's where all the answers were. And us dumb people didn't go to college. He's like, I'm glad I held out because now I'm as smart as you guys. I mean, I'm an astronaut doctor, and he just like, it was interesting. If you think about the ability now to figure things out, you can get into a good level of detail rather quickly. Just trying to set up, like we just switched our whole podcast setup, right? Like I know nothing about podcasts and the technical things that go along with it, but Rodecaster video and the Rodecaster Pro 2 and how to auto switch and how to do all this stuff. And with ChatGPT and a couple of YouTube videos, 3 hours later, I was able to completely customize and set up and redo and rewire to save tens of hours on the backside of it. So Like there's this ability to make you feel accomplished, right? To like be able to do things and feel like, you know what, I could have paid someone to do that or figure that out, but I'm able to get there. And I think there's a lot of that. Like I just want to learn just enough and we're going to be able to do that. But then it goes back to that appreciation for the master, right? The master of a craft, the master of X, where do they play in? And do you guys ever think AI is going to get there? Do you think that they will replace the masters?
I would say they're going to make the masters, at an absolute minimum, they're going to make the masters more efficient and more effective. I think they can supplement them in some meaningful ways. I think we're ways off from them ultimately replacing them. Just there's a lot of things AI is not good at. But I want to come back to, is some of this egotistical? Like, is some of this ego driven? Like, when we look at contributing to this world, and as I self-reflect on this, I feel like if someone were to propose to me, hey, you know what? You are going to be a runner, and you're going to inspire people with your running, and that's all you're going to do. And like that is kind of your thing. I think from an egotistical perspective, I would potentially like struggle with that. I want to be great spiritually. I want to be a master parent. I want to be great at fitness. I want to be good professionally. And I don't want to just be able to do this. I want to be able to do this and this and this. There's, I wonder if there's some intrinsic ego involved in our lack of desire to just be an absolute master in one particular, because I do believe in the statement that the world has plenty of people that are good at many things. The world needs people that are great and masters at few, as opposed to a jack of all trades. But I think there's something internally, at least for me, that I think I fight with there. There's a conflict about just being single-threaded.
Oh, well, that's exactly what drew me to this kind of topic. This discussion was exactly that. Feeling like I've got to do all of these things because I've made a commitment at some point in time, or I'm in, and then it's just a constant feeling of, if I don't make impacts and if I don't all, there's that. I think it was probably a decade ago where, there were these challenges or these things where you say no to everything for a day or say yes to everything for a day. And I feel like I'm wired to say yes to a lot. And again, maybe it's egotistical. Maybe it's not necessarily that. Maybe it's wanting to always be, I cannot always be there and help other people. I cannot tell you, and this is more of a fitness thing, but like the amount of stress that I've had over the last 24 hours because I wanted to fit a workout in today. I wanted to run with you guys. I wanted to run with JR yesterday. I want to run with Jeff Walker tomorrow. The amount of stress I've had about how to like orchestrate that. Oh, and by the way, I need to get my heat training in. So how can I get into your sauna tonight? Because I missed yesterday. And like putting all those pieces together, it's probably unnecessary, but then I feel like I'm not as good of a person, or I wasn't honest with myself, and I didn't support everybody in the way I best could have supported them, and I start to feel like a failure, when in all reality it probably doesn't matter as much. If that's an ego thing, cool. If it's something else, cool. But like I feel that same pull. It's like, man, if I'm not doing all of these things to support whatever greater good, but yeah.
I think there's a couple of things there. I think we all want to be valued. I think we want people to value us or appreciate us, and you search for that validation in some instances. But like back to your running thing, like what is driving you, and why do you feel like you have to do all those things with all the miles? Like what's the outcome you're trying to achieve with all that?
Well, that's a really good, I think there's a multi-threaded outcome. Like there's from the heat training and the workouts and the fitness side of it, it's like, all right, well, I'm 5 or 6 weeks into this build. I'm kind of pot committed already. I've put all these years. Does it really matter? I don't know. Like if I showed up at Boston this year and ran 3:01 or 3:05 or whatever, Oh, it doesn't really matter in the grand scheme of things. It's kind of maybe a self-commitment. Like, we started down this path, you're committed to this, you need to see it through. And then all of the benefits that come with the journey, right? Getting that workout in every day, feeling good about progress, staying fit, whatever. And then on the other side of it, it is being there from a support perspective, because I appreciate when people do that for me. So, those are the two things that I want to accomplish. I would say that I'm getting towards the point where this probably starts to fade away a little bit more. And I do things that I start to do things and engage in things that I can kind of off the couch and do, because this does feel a little bit more selfish. But I mean, those are the two things that I accomplished. I can't really tell you what the pull is to fit. I've been doing heat training for 13 months. If I miss 3 or 4 days in a row, I'm going to lose my heat adaptation, and it's going to take triple to quadruple the effort to get it back. So there's all of these little things that are probably insignificant, for whatever reason, really bother me. I don't know why.
Yeah. I think there's the internal drive for to be the best that you can be. Mm-hmm. I think that's incredible. I think the other side is just that's important to you. But I think we can't lose sight that the things that are important to us are likely very seldom important to other people, right? It's like you breaking the 3-hour marathon was really cool, and I remember it because you tried so hard for so long, but then tomorrow happened, right? And then it was like, oh, okay. And then tomorrow happened for you too, right? And it was a 2:48, and it's really interesting because my I've always been one that's really tried to focus on myself and making myself better and being the best. And one is just trying to live into potential. Two is probably somewhat ego driven, of wanting people to, look up to you and think you're successful and those types of things. And I haven't been able to juggle all those very well. So my running is had to take a back seat from a prioritization standpoint, because my kids are older and their most active fun times are from 8 to 10 at night. They come home. And so I've had to say, well, is getting up at 6 a.m. and running and being really tired by 8:30 p.m. the way to do it? Or do I just jump a couple miles in, spend 20 minutes on the tread, maybe 30, and then spend that time with them? So I think there's this point where, and I think what you're doing with running is, because half of what you said is, well, I need to do all this stuff because I got Boston. But the other half of what you said is I've got to do this because I really like to support people, because I know what that means. And so there's this encouraging, supporting. And as you define those two roles, I think it's interesting, which one is the driver and which one pulls you. And I think we tend, or will over time, start to choose things that are more towards helping other people versus ourselves. I've noticed a small transition in my life. Not a major one, but a small, versus kind of where my focus has started to tend to.
I think this is where goals can come back into play a little bit. I know we talked about them several weeks ago, but I think that's the time where you get the clarity on how you want to deploy your gifts and talents to leave the world better off than you found it. And I think in the chaos of the days and the weeks, I think it's very hard to distinguish when something is truly aligned with how you want to be using your time to give him back, and what is, kind of serving the shiny object of the moment, right? The urgent versus the important.
I mean, does the master, I would say it does. Does the master make a bigger impact? The person that, they're the ones that...
For sure.
To a narrow audience. The master may only appeal to 5 people, versus the generalist can appeal to 500.
I don't know about that.
The master could also, yes, it could appeal to 5 if it's a very niche, specific, you have to have all of this knowledge stacked on top of each other to even understand what this person is accomplishing, versus a Michael Jordan.
Versus but if you go back to say you're a runner, that's your thing, but you're spiritually not doing eternize, you're not a big focus on professional, just clock in, clock out. You may appeal to some runners. You may have a big or a small area in running, but all that other stuff doesn't exist.
I don't necessarily agree with that, because I think that's the common misconception, and I think that's the common misconception in business too. Why does every insurance person want to be a generalist? Because they think they've got a broader pool, right? But you mean less to that broader pool. And so I think it's a zero-sum game in a sense, that you can mean a lot. If you become a master, you can mean a lot to a meaningful amount of people, as opposed to meaning a little to a large group of people. Now, there's I think some ways to thread that needle, and some people are unicorns and stumble into both. But I think for most of us that don't have those outlets or channels, we have to choose. And I think it's even the case in relationships, right? We've all talked about this. There was a point in all of our social lives, particularly in college or others, where it was acquaintances. You know, we would have hundreds of acquaintances, and now we're down to, a dozen, close relationships or people that there's depth to. And I think we all, as we've gotten older, found a lot of value in that. I think that's the parallel that can be taken to about anything. But I think it's a little easier said than done when you're talking about your time every single day, devoting it to one thing. It seems daunting.
Yeah, well, and the thing that drives that, again, I think, is external expectation. Everybody expects you now to be able, because of all the resources we have, to do so much with so little, and to spread yourself as thin as possible. And I think we're all wired that way. I get comments all the time, how do you guys do so much? And this, that, and the other. But it does, there is this drive, or not drive, there is a pull for me to be a little bit more focused, and to do a thing versus all these things. It's not realistic. It's probably not going to happen, because the capitalistic society, or just society in general, doesn't support that. Or maybe I've made some life decisions that have put me in a position where I can't do that. But I definitely feel like, I don't feel as fulfilled as I think I could. And this is a personal thing, if I went deeper in one specific thing. And I know I personally am drawn to people that are masters of their craft, whatever it is.
I just want to clarify, because I think that's long-term fulfillment. And I think you're right, because I think it sucks in the short term, because you have to tell a lot of people no, and you got to tell a lot of things no. But I think you're right, long-term fulfillment, if we're able to get through that pain of eliminating the noise and disappointing some people in the short term, I do think there's long-term satisfaction waiting if we can stay the course.
I wonder why we're drawn to people that do those. Like, I watched a video the other day on a guy who built the hardest Super Mario Maker level ever. And it took him, so I don't know if you guys know how it works, but I'll explain this because it's kind of a fascinating story. Super Mario Maker is a game that came out for maybe Wii originally, or maybe the first Switch, but it's a game where you create your own Mario levels, and you create them for other people to play. And to upload a level, you have to finish it yourself. And this guy, there were some people. It's called Kaizu, but there were some people early on that made these difficult levels and uploaded them. And then they're kind of, this one particular guy got obsessed with it and decided to make the world's hardest level. And every time he would get close to beating it himself, he would make it harder and harder. And he did it for such a long time that the servers actually went down, so he couldn't even upload it anymore. So he's like, he had told all of his Twitch stream, or all of his followers and everything, and that he would give a tutorial on how to rebuild the level. But the chance for him to upload it came and went. He spent 8 years. I feel like it was somewhere 250,000 or 350,000 deaths until he finally beat it. But I was fascinated by that. Talk about just probably in the grand scheme of things, looked upon at society at large and be like, what an idiot. That's pointless. But there's probably a community that's like, man, if he spent 8 hours grinding on something or accomplished something in a video game world that's that difficult, then I can do this. And you never know what spark, that fire might start or hit, you know what I mean? But I thought that was fascinating, and it's fascinating to me. I'm constantly drawn to those types of performances.
What about attention span?
I was gonna say, I think one of the things they talk about in business is not chasing the shiny object, right? It's like, oh, you got one business, it's successful. If you spent more time focusing on just one business versus starting several, you'd actually probably be more successful. That's been proven time and time again. But what my question is to you guys, which I think is interesting, is like, let's just put this into levels, right? Like level 1 through 3 is, kind of just learning the basics, the easy entry. Mastery, let's say, is like 4, 5, and 6. Arguably, like, and I'm going to use business context because that's what I know best. Level 1, 2, 3 is pretty easy. Like I can go out and hire someone to build a logo, build a website. I got a product. Like that stuff is fun. It's engaging. It's energizing. But levels 4, 5, and 6 are really stinking hard. And when I'm in levels 1, 2, and 3, I feel like I'm accomplishing stuff. I'm getting somewhere. And then it's like, okay, now I got this product and this website to sell. Now I need to go door to door and start cold calling, which, you might as well just. So I wonder how much of it is that. It's like when you're becoming a master in something, the years and the time that it takes, you don't obviously see the return. It's not proportionate. We talk about the law of diminishing return. Getting from 80 to 100% takes thousands of hours, but getting from 0 to 80% might take 1,000 hours. Like there's this, so we don't even know when it's happening, or we don't appreciate it, or it's not valued. So we want to go back to levels 1, 2, and 3 because that's where the fun, the excitement, and the progress is. How does that hit you guys?
I think that aligns exactly with what you said from an attention span perspective. I deal with somebody who's has that problem, and it's as somebody who's again kind of interested in the fulfillment that comes from learning something at a deeper level. It's frustrating, It's like they get through in this particular individual. It's like level 1 or maybe level 2, and then it's like oh I need this new shiny thing, and it's very, very chaotic. There's been some success. There are ways to leverage that type of mentality I think you can leverage any type of mentality into success if you have the right relationships. But for me, I see it. It's a younger generation, probably a decade plus younger than us. But it's like, I've got to get back to these exciting times, and I gotta, and we have a graveyard, of companies that have been started and not ever made it off the ground because it was like, oh, there's this opportunity, let's go and do this, and it makes life very difficult, very chaotic, and it also for other people that come into an organization that has that type of culture, it encourages them to do the same thing. And that's where you get that conversation we had earlier about, in most instances it's a CEO that can do that. But when you get employees that come in and they start looking for all these things and they start playing in everybody's sandbox because they see that's the way to excite whoever else in the organization, it's really destructive in my opinion.
I think that's where the dopamine is. It's in levels 1, 2, and 3. And at the end of the day, we all, in today's day and age, I feel like we are chasing dopamine more than anything. And when you get into 4, 5, and 6, there's just becomes a lot of a grind, and there becomes a huge demand for delayed gratification, and we're wired less and less for that as a society. I think there are certain things that we're passionate about, and I think this is where passion and skill set intersect. Is the way it is generally those are the areas which you can plow through and still find a way to get to levels 4, 5, and 6 just through your enjoyment of it, or relatively, because there are just times where it's not fun. I don't care if it's sports. I don't care if it's hobbies. I don't care if it's your professional job. There comes a point where you have to grind through something you don't enjoy. And I talk to the kids about that a lot. Like Oliver didn't want to go to a soccer practice the other day because he said practices aren't fun. And he's been, in the academy they're in, it's year-round practices, but there's only 2 real seasons with a lot of games. So you got to go to, there are 2 to 3 practices a week for, I don't know, maybe 16 weeks. So you're talking about 40 practices, give or take, without playing in a real game, that gets really not fun. It gets not fun.
Yeah, I wonder if social media's impact on that has been, like your David Goggins of the world. Like you can post every tough run, right? You can try to, because again, I think it goes back to, you want to know what you're doing at the end of the day is going to be valued, is what I think. Like you want to know that your impact on the world is meaningful. You don't want to spend your whole life doing something and then realizing it's all for naught. You built something with your entire life that no one's ever going to use or value. So I think there's an intrinsic thing of like, I'm using my time wisely. And I think your environment and community influences that. And I think people try to cast a bigger net because you want to have as much impact as you can, right? So I want to cast this massive net and I want to have massive impact and I want to be well known and I want to be appreciated. And the truth is, nobody's going to remember you anyways, but maybe your family. Like we sit here right now, we've had, what are we on, the 50th president? What is it? He was 47 and 50 or 48 and 50.
Is he 47? Was it 45 and 40? It
doesn't matter. The point is all of us sitting here, we can't name more than probably 25 or 30 presidents combined. So arguably the leader of the free world when they were in charge for 4 to 8 years, and we can't even name them. So outside of our families, we're probably not going to leave a legacy. We're not going to be in a Bible. We're not going to, even some of the most influential people, that tends to drive me as this thought of like, I'm going to leave a legacy. But how does that influence you guys at all? Or do you even think about that as you're living your life?
I want to leave the world better off than I found it, to the extent my gifts and talents allow. And so for me, that's it. Legacy is not necessarily important. I'd love to leave tools and resources for the future generations of my family to maximize their impact as well. But that doesn't drive me. What I did want to add to what you said was, I think those names that have transcended over centuries and hundreds of years are the ones that devoted the bulk of their life to a single trade. Like your Michelangelo, they just created stuff that you can't create unless you spend decades, and it just creates an unparalleled level of appreciation that can be referenced for generations to come.
I agree with you in terms of the leaving things better. Because I think you're right. If you start thinking about what needs to be done to leave a legacy, it gets really depressing. It's like, then you start to shift into, well, then why do anything? And you get down that path. Well, there's no way anybody's ever going to remember what I've done. And I think a lot of people that struggle with mental health and struggle with depression, that's the thought, is like, why do anything? It doesn't matter anyways. It's kind of a nihilistic perspective on things. But for me, it's like, okay, you hear a lot of people talk, especially new parents. A guy said the other day, like, I do these hard things for my kids to see. Or whatever it may be. It may not be hard things. It may be whatever. Last time we did a podcast with the kids, Oliver spoke a couple times about you running businesses and starting your own businesses, and that's something he sees. And your kids said the same thing, Isaiah, about you. And so they see those things and they're like, oh, I can start something and I can build something. And I think that if those closest to us, those in our community see those things, I think we'd be surprised at what the impact is on the people closest to us, and who knows what that ripple effect could be, right? You go back to the running community, and I look at the Hamilton County Masters community as one of the best in the country. And is that driving other people in that age range to become more active because they see their friends accomplishing these crazy things? They're like, well, if these guys can go win, the whatever national championship, and because we've started, I think, as a society, coming back to these community events, right? I had a meeting with somebody a couple of weeks ago where they were telling me that they've stopped advertising digitally because it's impossible. Not impossible, right? But the return on it isn't what it once was. So they've started going back to activating and doing these community events because that's where they're seeing more impact, because the other side is so flooded. So I say that to see, these running communities are around these elite masters runners because everybody's returning to these community type events, and they see that, and that motivates them. And who knows, down the line, that continues, ripples through. Now you have people in that age range exercising more. They're around longer for their family members, their children, their grandchildren, and they're able to pass on more of their wisdom or even a few thoughts to help that next generation achieve more. And so, I look at that, I say, we don't know what the ripple effect is going to be from our efforts. And as long as it's contributing to that upward trajectory, then it was worth it. It's just, do we focus on one thing or try to do 1,000?
It's interesting as you guys are talking. Here's what I go to. I'm like, back in the day, people lived in small communities.
Mm-hmm.
You had the person that had the eggs and the milk. You had the blacksmith who made the weapons or the horseshoes. You had the person that was really good with leather. You had furs. Like, arguably, that's what it was, right? Like, people lived in a community that had all these skills and trades, and they worked together to live in somewhat harmony. I'm thinking of the Wild Wild West. Maybe there was a few more gunfights than probably needed to be, but like that was the play until we've gotten to this global economy and scale, and it's become about pricing. And I'm curious your thoughts on this. How much do you think it is like people want to excel financially? They want to have more. They want to do more. That's my assumption. Versus everyone living on the same playing field and all having different talents and everyone living very similar. There's not this hierarchy socio-economically. There's this, we're all kind of the same. We're all going to kind of contribute to the greater good no matter which ones you do, that this isn't valued more than this. And there's that kind of trading system. Why do you think that's gone away, or how do you kind of look at that?
Well, you said it. I think it's ego. It's 100%. Like, I think the Stoics early on were onto that, like fighting back against the ego. And I think that the advent of a lot of the different revolutions that we've seen, the Industrial Revolution and the technological revolution we've seen, have enabled people to feed the ego versus trying to keep it down. You look at some of the wealth that was born out of, if you think about it realistically, for the most part, the mega wealthy were born out of those revolutions, right? Rockefeller was born out of the Industrial Revolution. Elon and Gates and all of those guys were born out of the technological revolution. They were born as a set of circumstances was provided to them that typically wasn't provided to other people. And then I think, we've done a bad job. It's great that we're seeing pushback against it, but I think for the longest time it was, for Christ's sake, the U.S. sold it. American dream. Like, it was an actual packaged thing. Mm-hmm. You need to go after this and you need to do this. And it was this.
More money, more things, right?
And I think what we're seeing is that while that, it's crystallizing for me now, right? While that is probably, it's idolatry, right? Like, what a powerful point of leverage for a human. Like, feed the ego. We're going to help you do this. Here's some of these. But when you get to where we're starting to get to as a society, it's like, maybe we took the wrong path. Maybe that's not, maybe what you're saying is spot on. Because I don't know, in my depths, I feel like it would be so enjoyable if people could, and a lot of this deals with situations that I'm in, on a regular basis with other things that I'm involved in. But like, it would be so refreshing if everyone could trust in, and everyone could trust in another skill set as a master of something, and then those individuals could take pride in that one particular thing. It would. I feel like what you said with, I don't know.
Well, would you guys, this is an interesting question, because I just listened to an Acquired podcast about the NFL, and one of the miraculous things they did was the media share, which was completely against, they basically said, no matter what team, no matter what market you're in, we're doing equal shares. Now it's $11.4 billion that gets divided equally. Would you take all your resources and join a community of 10 families, and everyone pool everything together, and everyone lives equally amongst that. And it may mean you can't have Starbucks every day or buy a new pair of running shoes, once a month. Like, arguably that's what levels the playing field to some extent, is like, okay, well, if one person makes $1 million a year and one person makes 5,000 a year, well, no, as long as you're doing a trade and you're participating, we're going to take all the resources into one pool, and we're all going to make sacrifices.
Hey man, I think for me, this is something we should see back in nightlife with tip pooling. If we talked about our different perspectives on the Bible in different podcasts, right? And my perspective was upward aim, right? It's a set of rules and whatever, and it's these stories that have resonated to help us aim up. I think if everybody's putting their best foot forward and doing their best with what they were given, what their skill set is, whatever, then I think I jump into that. I'm all in, because I think what it also does, and I think this is where social media has had a terrible impact, is it removes a lot of the coveting of thy neighbor's stuff. You know what I mean? Like, if everybody's on the same playing field, then you're not worried about getting Starbucks every day, because no one is. I feel like it would be more harmonious personally. Maybe I'm wrong.
I mean, that's essentially socialism, right?
I think it's different.
Put it in and spread it all out.
No, I don't think it is. I think because, my point is that, like, it's, like I said, the qualifier for me is that everybody is doing the most. I think where you see socialism fall down is some people still work their ass off. And then you have people who it's like a
teacher. A teacher does not get paid what it should, but arguably one of the most honoring professions there is, and they get paid $40,000 to $60,000 to be a public school teacher, but it's a passion and a drive, where if they went and became a consultant, they'd make $200,000 because it's in the public sector. So I think, or in the private sector.
I think that's where the model falls apart. I mean, certainly we're wired. I think we're wired to be in a civil society like that. I think that's why some of why we struggle in today's environment is because of our deep wirings don't play well with the environment. It's just drastically different than what we came up in for a lot of years. Where were we?
You had said socialism, and I had said, well, no.
Yes, it does.
Effort.
To your point, I think that's where it falls apart. Is I think it's very, very difficult to cut a group of community members that all contribute with the same standard of excellence,
right?
And I think that's where it falls apart, because this guy over here, my clothes are falling apart because they're a horrible, craftsman or seamstress or whatever, and then someone over here is just creating these unbelievable, whatever, and so I think that makes it extremely difficult.
Yep.
I don't know this, but from a bird's eye view, I feel like the Amish and we're somewhat an Amish country, live somewhat like this, to where, like, you grow up in an Amish community, they have very similar trades. Most of them are in construction, but I'm sure they have the farm and stuff that they take care of there. I know they don't buy insurance. They self-insure, and it's kind of a pool. And you have the opportunity to leave if you don't want to be Amish, go out in the real world and experience it, versus coming back. And a lot of them choose to live in there. Now, there's a lot of other things that go into it. What I don't know for certain, and I've done zero research. I want to preface that. It's like, I don't know how the money's pooled, or if it's pooled by family, or I don't know any of that. But that sticks out to me as a model of where they have come together, stayed in communities, and done something completely different than what the world says. And it appears they live somewhat simply as a community as a whole.
I think that's the value proposition there, because I know we've talked about expectations on prior podcasts, but they are set up for a lot less disappointment because their expectations haven't normalized to all of the things that we have today. So I think there's just so many challenges. I think from a distance, we're so distant from that model, so say societal model, that I think we're not probably appreciating some of the challenges that manifest in that sort of a thing. Like somebody who might be really good as a blacksmith or whatever that happens to be, or construction person, but there's already a construction person, so they've got to do this job, even though their gifts and skills and talents don't necessarily lend itself to that, because you need one of, all of these different types of trades. I think there are some definite benefits to that model, but I think there are some definite challenges as well.
Do you think that's why? Do you think that's, there's all the people attribute anxiety to all these different things. Do you think that we're wired to lock in, focus, and improve one specific area? Like a mom is wired to be a mom. I mean, you want to talk about something that has come under with the trad mom stuff. And yeah, that's like in the last year or two, but like you want to talk about something that's been hotly debated for the last 60 years is professional wife versus at-home wife. And so, do you think anxiety comes from, okay, I have all of these resources available to me now as a whatever. If I'm at an at-home mom, I could probably do like a side job, and I could probably do this, and probably like, is our anxiety come from the fact that we're wired to do and excel and be really, really good at this one thing, but yet we're doing 40 different things and we feel like it's not quite right? Like, do you think there's any truth in that?
Pose that question more.
Well, okay.
Directly.
I'll give you an example. We'll just say running. Let's say I take comfort in producing races, and I feel drawn to that and called to that, and am pretty confident that if that's all I did from an anxiety perspective, I would feel much more in control or much less stressed than producing races, working full-time professionally, partnering on other projects, supporting, you get where I'm going.
1,000%. Yes. I think we get ourselves overcommitted and we feel these obligations and potential disappointments if we aren't able to be everything to everyone we said we were going to do. I think the more we can step back, figure out what we should be doing with our gifts and talents, not necessarily what we want to be doing, but what we should be doing, and devoting ourselves in that capacity, I think it takes, I personally, my opinion would be, it takes anxiety down substantially.
Yeah, and I think your environment and your community and just the world in general is a big influencer in that. I mean, women, I'll never forget, me and Angel were on a trip, and I think we were in Germany, and they asked, well, what do you do? She's like, well, I'm a stay-at-home mom. And they're like, you just stay at home? Like, that's all you do? And she was like, yeah, I've got 4 kids. And it was almost this like, wow, you're not doing a whole lot, right? And there is a play of like, am I doing enough? I think it boils down to a couple things. Am I doing enough? How is what I'm doing being viewed by other people? I think that plays into it. And then there's I want to do more because I want more. I think that's kind of the third component there, is like, I want to take on this next project so I have another opportunity at earning more income or being more successful, or there's these things that I think play into it. And I do believe it's influenced by society a ton, or ego. I think we're driven to continue to improve and get better. And when you see opportunity, it's easy to go to level 1, 2, 3. And it's easy to try to push those levels through and make progress and do those things. And then you end up like, oh my gosh, I don't have the energy to do 4, 5, 6. And now I'm not good enough. Now I'm letting people down. I think life would be simpler if we could focus more.
So what's the way out of it? Right? Clearly we're all sitting here like, oh yeah, we're doing it wrong. And we're going to go back to doing it the exact same way. What is the way out of this?
I think you guys said something in a prior podcast about disappointing people. And, I think in a prior podcast, we had talked about expectations around connectedness to the world, right? You can be overly engaged, overly connected. And, you'd cut a lot of inputs out of your life, and you'd spoken to the fact that, you're going to have to disappoint some people. Very similar to, you saying, and we knowing that like your wife doesn't answer her phone, so it's a surprise versus a expectation. And I think that's probably, it's a razor's edge in a lot of instances because the majority of people, myself included, are not in at least professional situations where we can disappoint too much. But you can have those conversations and test those waters as much as possible and try to reframe what, try to reframe with those in your life around what you think would put you in a position to operate optimally from an output perspective and from a mental health perspective. Like, I'm no good to anybody if I'm constantly stressed out, constantly losing my shit, whatever. But if I approach things this way and maybe try to accomplish 70% or 80%, I'm still going to get to the watermark you want me to get to. You may not perceive me as readily available as you think I should be, but trust me, I'm getting it done. But I'm so much more in control, and I'm able to look at things through a lens that is it allows me to be more effective.
I think the way out of this is through a personal mission statement. I think if you don't have a personal mission statement and haven't gone through that exercise to develop one, I'm say you're doing it wrong. I feel like people taking the time to understand their gifts and talents, how they can contribute, where their passions are, I think that's the problem. And continuing to revisit that and see how that translates to things that you can do on a weekly, monthly, annual basis, daily basis, hourly basis to leave the world better off than you found it. Because here's the deal. Until you are really, really convinced, you're really convicted that this is how you should be spending your time, and these are the skills, talents, and passions that have been planted in you to leave the world better off than you found it, then I don't think you're ever going to be able to tell people no. You're not going to have the conviction to say, I'm sorry, I can't do this because I'm so clear on this and the value proposition and ultimately what this can be if I dedicate and focus myself on that. If you don't spend the time getting clarity there through a personal mission exercise, businesses have mission statements. They all have, like, why do we not do this more personally? In my opinion, I think that's the way out of this. And it goes back to essentially planning and giving some forethought to how you want to be spending your time before you're in the moment. And the temptation is going to be to chase the dopamine.
Yeah, and that's where I think discipline comes in. It's not only knowing, but it's being able to say no to the next opportunity because of the time. I think one thing that I struggle with is when things slow down, when I'm not doing level 1 to 3, sometimes I'm searching for level 1 to 3 again and realizing that sometimes there's slower seasons that need more thoughtfulness and using that time for thoughtfulness versus busyness. And so I've had times in my life, like when COVID happened, the whole world kind of stopped for a period of time. And that's when I bought my second company at that point in time, because it was like, well, what are we doing? Let's go build level 1 through 3 again. And I kind of learned that. And so I think part of it's discipline and part of it is being willing to stay focused and excited about what you got going on. And then I think your mission statement can change too. I think that's one of the other things that we haven't talked about is your mission statement can change. It's going to adapt. And then you got to continue to be honest with yourself and refocus what your goals are. But I think we're all wired for drive. And so that drive is going to naturally want us to take on more. And that natural ability to take on more within that channel of what we're called to do is going to be important. But also we need to put that to rest a little bit. It doesn't always have to be more. It just has to be focused.
Yeah. No, I think you're both right. It's much more difficult to navigate than it ever has been. We talked about social media, and now you see so much, and you see people that have been able to leverage things into these amazing accomplishments, and that's great because it drives society forward. But at the same time, like, yeah, I mean, you got to know where to align your passions, and you got to stay disciplined. So,
well, I don't think any of us are recommending socialism as the way forward, but there's something about community. Me and my wife have always joked about, let's go start our own community. Let's go get 5 or 10 families and just like build a street and do that. she wants to actually pick up houses, old houses, and like physically move them there with the church at the end of the road. And I think that's crazy. But I think there is something to the way they used to live and the way they valued different talents and the way people specialize. Back to, Todd, what you talked about with during the Renaissance period. I just feel like there's something there. I think we all feel it. I'm not sure we're all certain how to get there or want to get there, because I think it takes some sacrifice, some personal sacrifice that we'll need to be willing to make. So appreciate everyone tuning in. Hopefully you got some good stuff today, and we look forward to seeing you next time.